Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to dive into the world of AI and see how BrandGuard is teaching machines to understand brands like no one else. Sounds really interesting. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros. Business Bros. Today we're diving into the cutting edge world of AI in marketing with the visionary leader who's at the forefront of the industry. As a CMO of BrandGuard, she's reshaping how brands leverage technology to maintain consistency and integrity across all platforms with an approach that combines innovation with meticulous brand governance. She's setting new standards in the marketing domain. So get ready to be inspired by the incredible Deirdre McGlashan.
Wow, I wasn't expecting a video intro. Thank you.
There we go. Party ready to rock and roll. Let's do this thing. Deirdre, thank you for taking time to be on here today. First question I always ask is, you're doing something as a business, something that you're trying to promote, get your message out. What is that for you?
What is the business?
Yeah.
The business is BrandGuard. So BrandGuard is a brand governance platform. So you can use it to, let's say you're creating assets for a brand. Let's say I'm creating assets for you, and I want to make sure that it's on brand for Business Bros. And then I would be able to put it in BrandGuard if there was a BrandGuard instance and check it to make sure I've got the right logos, got the right sounds, got the right look and feel to do effectively brand governance on your behalf so that you don't have to check as many assets manually.
Okay. Let's break that down a little bit. So in case people are new to this whole thing, because oftentimes when people get started, I don't think they quite understand marketing in general, much less what is a digital asset, what is governance. So kind of break it down for me so like a fifth grader can understand it.
Makes sense. So everybody in marketing has assets, things that they put out there in the world, be it a video ad, be it a display ad, be it search copy. And they want to make sure that it's all on brand because brand consistency is really important. Studies have shown that brand consistency drives sales uplift, drives better loyalty, consumers recognize it better. So it's really important that you get things right, like you get the right logo, that if you have a particular style, that shows through because it's kind of shows the authenticity, that if you have the right font, they have the right color. So those are the types of things that today what happens is people design those things and then somebody has to do quality assurance and look at it and say, yep, that's good, or nope, that's the wrong color. Can you go back and do it again? And right now it's a really manual process. And we believe that in the future, when more and more people use generative AI, you'll just have too many things for a human to be able to check. And having some technology that can at least do a first pass and maybe take care of all the housekeeping stuff will then save the person's time to be able to do the higher level marketing.
So I'm assuming that I've already created my logos. I've already chosen my colors. I already have that all set up. And then you guys come in and make sure that happens across multiple platforms?
Yes, exactly. So if you have your logos, all those colors, the way it would work, let's start from the beginning. What we'd ask for is your style guide, and your style guide would probably define your logo, your colors, your fonts, all of that. And we'd take that in and teach the machine about that. Then we'd ask you for some assets. So about maybe 30 pieces of creative that you really like and think are really good for your brand. Like this is pinnacle stuff. If everything could look like this, it'd be amazing. And then about 30 pieces that aren't on brand. So maybe stuff that was created for you, but you're like, no, it's kind of off. Almost the closer, the better. So the machine can learn those tiny differences. And then we train the machine. Also a list of competitors that we scrape the open internet for their stuff. Then the machine trains, and in about 24 hours, it learns what your brand consists of. So when it sees something new, it can go, okay, let me do a series of checks. Let me check your precision elements like your font, your logo, your colors. check those off. And then let me check your brand principles, your look and feel, tone of voice. Is this business brothers enough? Is this business bros enough?
All right. So then once the AI machine has learned what my stuff is it going to help me create stuff? Is it going to help me kind of use my assets and use my logos and use my color schemes to kind of help me grow in that marketing space?
No, because we think that there are so many tools out there right now that do that. There are so many generation engines you can choose out there. And pretty much any creation tool that you're using right now probably is adding AI to it. Some sort of a co-pilot, some sort of an assistant. There's more than enough out there to help you generate stuff, but all of those are using different models, and there's just more and more of them. There's no one source of truth for your brand. So right now you have to check them in every single platform. And the way that Adobe might interpret your brand might be slightly different than the way Figma interprets your brand, might be slightly different than the way a Jasper or a writer interprets your brand. So we think that brands would need almost a third-party verification or a single source of truth that all of these can then funnel back into and say, okay, are these on brand? Because right now, if all funnels back to usually one person.
So let me ask you about, how did you come up with this whole idea for BrandGuard? How did it come about? And what gap did you kind of see in the market that you felt you had to come in and solve the problem for?
Well, Hernan, you're going to laugh because we actually started out in the generation space. We were like, okay, because of the powers of generative AI to be able to produce things so quickly and to be able to use data to do it, we said, marketers are going to need hyper-personalized content is going to be more effective, was the premise. So if we knew enough about the target audience, let's say you and I both buy shoes, but I'm sure you buy different shoes than I buy. And so imagine a shoe company could create personal ads that were more to my liking for me, more to your liking for you. And then it would be deployed on the Google and Facebook platforms and optimized. So that was the original product. That was the birth. And so what happened was the more we took it to marketers were like, we love that idea, but I'm not going to be able to check 5,000 assets. I can barely check the 50 I've got sitting in my inbox right now. So the team set out to figure out whether or not we could teach machines to understand brands to effectively do that quality assurance. And we figured out that you could. So then we started shopping that around. We're like, cool tool. BrandGuard was just a QA module. And then here's the media plan. And everybody said, okay, yeah, that's just performance marketing. Tell me more about this. Tell me more about this BrandGuard thing and what else it can check. And that's when we realized that there's such a huge pressure point when it comes to checking of assets, because usually in any size team, you're going to have a bunch of people out there making stuff and a very small team checking stuff.
So who's the ideal client here? I mean, I'd imagine there's any company who's trying to grow right now is trying to build a brand, but you want to work with a specific type of clientele. Who is that for you?
Two kinds. So one kind is the big enterprises that have enough assets to not be able to have humans check them effectively. So if you're a really small business and you flight maybe 10 pieces of media a month, you're probably not going to need BrandGuard. Do you know what I mean? But if you are a big company and you flight, 10 pieces an hour, then you will need BrandGuard because there's just so many assets. So that's kind of number one, kind of that enterprise client. The other customer that's really good for us are people really just exploring and interested in using generative AI to really be at scale, not just the test and learn, but I want to pump out 1,000 of these. I want to pump out 100,000 of these. And I want to check them, but I can't check them manually. So I'll set up a BrandGuard to be able to check that. And so I think those are the different types, because we see some people wanting to play around with it, but they just can't process what they've been outputting. And they're trying to find a more efficient way of processing it. And the others are large enterprise businesses that just have need for, thousands of assets a month.
So some of those companies, I mean, you're literally looking at the asset themselves, right? So you're looking at the I was thinking shoes for some reason in my mind. They might be created, customized for different people in different ways, and so you're looking at the physical assets and kind of matching the brand there. But I always feel like with branding, there's look and there's feel, right? And part of it is the mission behind the company and what it represents. And that's not always something tangible that you look at. Does BrandGuard kind of help with that aspect of branding as well?
That's really an interesting question, because right now we're dealing with more the look and feel and tone of voice, but we do capture that because this is something we're playing around with. This is still fairly new, but brands often have archetypes. You know what I mean? You're the rebel, or you're the safe pair of hands. And that often gets really described, and that informs a lot of the content. Usually a combination of the two, probably 70% one thing and 30% another. And so one of the things that we've been playing around with is this concept of clips, which means that it judges things, not just is it or isn't it in a binary way, but more on a grade. Now, where does it fall in the spectrum of, let's say, risky to safe? And where does it fall? So this is something we're just playing around with in the research team to see whether or not we can catch these archetypes, create these archetypes, and then evaluate new content against the archetypes. So therefore, catch exactly what you're talking about. Is it still in the spirit of where this brand should be or where this brand wants to go, rather than just specifically looking at look and feel?
AI, I mean, it's reshaping so many different aspects of businesses. I heard the other day that there's a race going on, a bet going on. How soon will there be $1 billion company run by one person and a bunch of AI? I think it's a tremendous race, and it's awesome to see companies doing different things with it. Where do you see, seeing as you work with a lot of AI, different ways to kind of utilize it? Where do you see it kind of in the landscape of marketing and brand management? Where do you see it going in the near future, or where do you kind of want it to go?
That's a great question. I think where it's going and where we want it to go is, I think it's such a good helper. It's such a good aid to people. Do you know what I mean? And we see marketers using it in many, many different ways, all the way from, pure innovation to maybe I just want to do something faster. That might be maybe I want to be able to I want to be able to look at 20 mock-ups because I'm not quite sure what I want yet. And I want to play around with it. So I want some volume so I can look at it, through to things like automation or data-driven decisioning when it comes to media flighting and media optimization. So I think that's where people are using it. And I think that's the dream. It's if you can alleviate a lot of the donkey work, for lack of word for it, and allow, kind of free people then to be more creative, to think about the brand. What we find in today's world is, just now, with how many different channels do we have from a media standpoint, just now to service that, you've got a bunch of people just literally whacking out resizes and things like that. And no one's actually getting to have the time to be able to think about what's next, where the consumer landscape's going, how that brand can connect with the consumer more. So I think that AI is a great aid to that, and being able to take away some of this more rote basic work. At the same time, you can't just take away someone's work and not upskill them too. I think that the savings of time can be used for higher order thinking, but also in this world of generative AI, I think it's really important for people to, make sure that there's a strong L&D program so that they're learning along the way, so that they can future-proof themselves as well.
There's so much that people want AI to be. There's so many things that AI is learning to do already, but there are also misconceptions that I think people have about AI in marketing. I'm sure you've encountered them as you talk to different clientele. What are some of those misconceptions, and how are you guys addressing them?
That's a great question. I was talking with a friend about this over the weekend. I think one of the biggest misperceptions, at least that I think, and I'm old because I started in the days of when the commercial internet was just getting born. And so I think that right now, because the stuff that's coming out of generative AI looks so polished. Do you know what I mean? It looks so good. Some of the stuff you see out there, that's really professional looking. So I think that one of the biggest misperceptions is we feel like we have arrived when actually we have not. We are on the beginning of this journey. We don't even know exactly what technologies are going to come out on top. Right now, we're using transformers, which are really, really compute heavy. And, will that be the future? Will there be ways to orchestrate it? I liken it kind of to the old days of the commercial internet. When we first started, we thought portals were the thing. We thought, America Online on CDs was the thing, the delivery mechanism. Obviously, that changed. We got better bandwidth. We got better processors. So I think the biggest misperception is that we're there. And I think what people have to really think about And I think people spend a lot of time right now thinking about, oh, which tool should I choose? Because this is going to be my only set of tools. And I think people should think about much more, what do I want to do with this? Even now we have a portfolio of tools. What do I want to do with this? What am I trying to achieve? And then I can choose the right tool to do that. I was recently, the engineers shared with me recently, like a quick snapshot of these battery of tests that they put the different technologies through. So GPT, 3.5 to 4 to Llama through to, some of the Claude algos. And they looked at them 4 different things. And what was interesting was there was no clear winner. Some were better at some things than other things. And so if you want to get this particular thing done, actually, you probably want to use that tool. If you want to get this particular thing done, tool number 2 might actually be better for you. And I think it's important as we think this through that we first define what we want to do, because a good strategic idea is always going to resonate. If you're led by the tool, it might not.
Yeah, and you mentioned how there's a number of different tools, and I know I mean you see them in your thread if you're in the marketing space. Different tools that come out all the time, but they're not all made in the best way, I guess. You kind of got to get in there and test them out. Some of them do some great things, and some of them say they do some stuff and it just doesn't work out. If you were to give advice to people when they're selecting tools, when they're thinking about what they want to achieve, what should they be looking at when they work with some of these tools to make sure they're picking one? Because there's so many different options and so many different subscriptions that you can jump into. Yeah. You want to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls. What should people be looking at these different tools?
Well, you're not going to love this answer, but I think right now is the time for pitfalls. I think right now we have all these tools, and I think you gotta get used to, in a way, these tools are teaching us how to use them. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I think in a way you kind of have to spread bet at this point, and you kind of want to have your fingers in everything so that you kind of get an understanding of the way or the almost information architecture of each, so that you can think that through as you then can make future decisions. And you can see kind of their trajectory. How are they improving month on month? How are they, which ones are laggards, which ones are leaders? But I think also, and a really important thing is, I think when it comes to AI and the ethics of AI, you have to ask a lot of questions about where's this data coming from? How is it being fed, and how is it being monitored? Because just like a kid, you give it a bunch of knowledge, but then you don't send it to school and never have a PTA meeting. You go talk to the teacher, you know what I mean? You go check in on them. You make sure that the curriculum is still on track. And I think that we need to be thinking about that, asking those questions as well, because the more informed people are, the better choices they can make for now, but also a better informed future.
There's a lot of talk about going into Web 3.0, mainly because of the whole TikTok ban and people kind of looking into different opportunities, taking control of their creatives and things like that. And there are also so many cool tools like HeyGen, for example, where you can kind of clone yourself essentially, and have stuff going on out there. Does your company's BrandGuard help ensure things like where I create clones, or other people might create clones of me, saying certain things or doing certain things using AI where it's not really me? Is there a guard against protecting myself in a digital world?
That's a super important thing. So we actually have, there's a company called Reality Defender that effectively detects deep fakes. They're awesome, and they're good friends of ours. So we rely on them to do the deep fake detection. So imagine that you're looking at a video and you're employing both BrandGuard and Reality Defender. They can tell you whether or not it's fake or not, and we can tell you whether or not it's on brand or not.
That's a big
Does that make sense?
Yeah. But yeah. And that's a huge differentiation, because, on the one hand, I do want to make sure that the stuff that's being created is on brand, it's on message. But I also want to protect myself. I mean, I'm not a celebrity like some of these other people out there, but Morgan Freeman, for example, is one of the voices that gets copied over and over and over again, image and likeness and a lot of those things. And it kind of gets scary when you are participating in some things and your likeness kind of gets signed away off to do its own thing. I mean, I personally, it it's terrifying when we go into a digital world, but also kind of exciting, because I remember watching things like Ready Player One, where you're able to kind of go into these worlds of avatars and different creations. What do you feel, or what do you expect when it comes to BrandGuard, like future developments, anything that we can expect or that you're excited about that's coming out, specifically even like in the video content space?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk first about what you were just saying, because that is one of the things we see for our long-term future. So when you talked about, people being copied, so that's part, when I said there's one source of truth for your brand being BrandGuard, being able to check everything, the reason we think that's really important is there are right now a zillion generation engines out there, and people who have are in the generation space, and obviously that's going to shake out. There's going to be some consolidation. That's why we're not in that space. However, at some point people are going to be like, do I really want 7, 12, 20 different versions of my brand out there, one in every one of these generation engines, right? Or do I want to create, or do I want to have my one source of truth almost become models for hire? Now I know them, I've trained them, I've given them all of the data. I know how they've been fed. I know how they were raised. And this is a really good model for me. Then this is something my boss talks about. He says, think about in the future, if I've got this one source of truth, these could then turn into, we could then reverse it and then be models for hire, to be hired out into, to be used by these applications. But also imagine, let's say you're Morgan Freeman. So you've got Morgan Freeman himself, and then you've got Morgan Freeman GPT, let's say, and then maybe it's potential in the future that he could say, I've been invited to these 4 speaking engagements, I can only do 1, but for a lower price, Morgan Freeman GPT could show up. And in a way, then he knows and authorizes the fact that it is a non-real version of himself, but because it's his own and he trusts all of the training data, he trusts the output of it as well. So that's kind of a long-term, that's how my boss, that's how he thinks about this sort of one source of truth. And I think that's really interesting. In terms of video, video is coming soon. We have figured it out. So we know how to do video. And so if you didn't want it integrated in our application, we could do it. Because we've tested, we've tested it in Streamlit. It works really, really well. Now we just need to integrate it into the total package itself.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And I kind of want to go back to your the GPT of Morgan Freeman, because I think it's kind of cool to be able to do that on the celebrity side. But on the other side, it could be as simple as replicating your sales staff. I mean, I know there are rules right now about outbound phone calls when it's AI or messaging like that, but that doesn't say anything about inbound. You can have the inbound business coming in and your sales team, which is clones of yourself, kind of going across the platform, and you've trained it to have all the information that's necessary. That is replicating your sales staff without hiring sales staff. I mean, that to me is already incredible for business owners that need to scale in a way that doesn't really hurt their bottom line. That's closer to that one person show reaching $1 billion. And I think the future is getting there. If people want to reach out, they want to find out more about BrandGuard, learn more about what it is that you have to offer, maybe specifically for their companies, how can they do that?
They can find us scrolling at the bottom there, brandguard.ai. They can reach us at contact@brandguard.ai. And also, if people want to follow us on LinkedIn, we are BrandGuard AI.
Perfect. Any last minute piece of advice to marketers looking to kind of embrace AI technology, but they're afraid of losing that human touch?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think that we have to remember that what generative AI is really good at producing content that's mediocre to good. I would say the first generation stuff was pretty mediocre. Now it's getting pretty good. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes to excellent, when it comes to great to excellent and truly resonating with people, that's still taking humans right now, because it still takes that human touch, that humanity in a way to resonate. And so I think that the advice I would give to marketers who are afraid to get started is, number one, get started. Just play around with it. Don't expect that it's going to change your life from day one, but get used to it, because the way it should be used is, if you think about that mediocre to good, great to excellent framework, you should be finding all the opportunities you can to use generative AI to do the mediocre to good stuff, so that you have more time to be excellent, to be an excellent marketer, to be an excellent representative of your brand.
100%. Look, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, there's stuff you do on a daily basis that I know you would love to hire somebody to take over, but we're living in an era where AI can help you out. And when it comes to your brand, you want to make sure that across the platforms, everything is on point. And if you need a little bit of help with that, there's a team here ready to help you out. Make sure you guys go to BrandGuard.ai, BrandGuard.ai, and figure out how to protect yourself across all those platforms and make all that branding on point. Thank you very much, Deirdre, for coming on the program today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you guys on the next one. That's all we got for you guys on this one. Peace. And we're out.
It's over. Go home.
Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast, but not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz to get started.